Most people would never expect $1 million treasure to be one of the last things left behind at a garage sale. When the owner arrived at the local garage sale, it had already been running for 2 days and was almost picked clean. She assumed nothing valuable would be left. But by chance, she found a damaged Buddhist figure mixed in with the leftovers. Its gilding was worn away, one arm was missing, and one hand had broken off. But to her, it was still beautiful.
I thought it was so beautiful, I didn't mind the damage.
She paid somewhere between $75 and $100, which felt expensive at the time, and brought it home.
To me, it was worth $100 or whatever I paid, so I didn't really care.
At Roadshow, specialists identified the figure as a gilt bronze Wenshu Bodhisattva, the Buddhist embodiment of wisdom and insight. The elegant drapery, jeweled chest, serene face, and royal ease pose pointed to an exceptionally important Chinese sculpture. The figure was initially dated to the early 15th century, during the early Ming dynasty. Even without its original base, the quality stood out.
I think those who understand Buddhist works of art from that period would look at this object and say it's beyond a very wealthy patron's. A very conservative retail price would be $100,000 to $125,000.
Really? Are you really serious? Oh my goodness. I can't believe it.
It's a wonderful object.
You think the story ends with a 6-figure appraisal? Not even close. What happened next would multiply that value many times over. After the program, further research compared the sculpture to museum examples and pushed scholars toward an even earlier dating. In March 2019, it sold at Sotheby's, New York for $2.06 million after a 7-minute bidding battle. Sometimes the difference between a $100 purchase and a $2 million treasure is simply being the person who stops to take a second look. If you saw a rusty old drive-in theater sign sitting in an antique store, you would probably walk right past it without a second glance. But this man did the exact opposite.
And I happened to see it in there and didn't think much of it when I first saw it.
Tom found it in Rosendale, New York, not far from Peekskill, and at first he did not think much of it. Only later, after reading Pete Seeger's book, did the words Peekskill Drive-In suddenly connect to history.
And realizing that the Peekskill rides had happened, and I said, why does that ring a bell, Peekskill Drive-In?
The sign came from the 1949 Hollowbrook Drive-In concert, where Pete Seeger, Paul Robeson, and others performed in support of unions, civil rights, and political freedom. The concert itself had already been postponed once after violent opposition, but the organizers refused to cancel it and returned days later with thousands of supporters. The event became infamous because the performers and audience were attacked by an angry mob after the show. Cars were forced through a road lined with rocks, and Seeger's own vehicle had every window smashed.
One of the men in the motorcade lost his eye.
It was really a violent time.
Because of that, the sign is now regarded as a small but powerful symbol of a pivotal moment in American history.
The value on it at auction is $2,000 to $3,000.
Holy cannoli. Really?
Not long afterward, curator Deanna McLeod saw it and later helped arrange for the sign to be placed on long-term loan at the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame in Boston.
It may be just a tin sign, but it's not just a tin sign, right?
To think that the sign is here with other important artifacts, I get a smile on my face knowing that. Because what good is it hanging in my office?
People visit a dump expecting to find trash. One worker found something entirely different. After spending years sorting through discarded items, he came across a large box filled with old papers, photographs, and personal belongings that seemed too interesting to throw away. At first, it looked like a random collection of forgotten keepsakes.
Where did you get this from? What did you say?
From the dump.
From the dump. Okay. So what were you doing at the dump?
I work there, and I get to pull out whatever I like. mostly in antiques.
Got much?
3 sheds full.
But hidden inside was an extraordinary story. The box contained more than 200 letters written by a woman who had once worked for one of the most famous figures of the 20th century. She served as a cook, while her husband worked as a butler. Together, they were employed by Winston Churchill. In letter after letter, she described Churchill's daily activities, his mood, and life behind the scenes during wartime. The correspondence created an unusually detailed record that connected directly to the items found in the box. Among them were signed photographs, personal gifts, a cigar case, and even a hat believed to have belonged to Churchill himself. Normally, collections like this can be difficult to authenticate.
Very likely, it's not real.
But the letters changed everything. They provided a continuous chain of evidence linking the objects to the people who originally received them.
But I've seen all those letters from that lady to her son. Daily letters saying, this is what Winston is doing today. And this is during wartime as well.
Yeah.
And it's not just these bits here. You've got lots of other things that Winston touched, Winston signed, and Winston owned.
Yeah.
So, we had to think about this. So I think that your box, remind me where you got it from again?
The dump.
The dump. We think that your box is worth £10,000.
The appraiser realized this was far more than a collection of souvenirs. It was a rare archive tied directly to one of history's most influential leaders. What had been rescued from a dump turned out to be a remarkable collection of Churchill memorabilia. A box destined for disposal had become a valuable piece of history. Sometimes the most extraordinary treasures appear in the most ordinary places. 7 years before bringing this item to the appraisal table, its owner spotted it at a local rummage sale and decided to take it home. The purchase price was modest, and there was little reason to believe it was anything more than an unusual old sled.
And I paid about $35 for it.
At first glance, it looked like a child's winter toy, but experts quickly realized it was much more than that. Handcrafted from pine and richly carved by an unknown maker, the sled belonged to a category collector's prize as American folk sculpture. Unlike factory-made toys, this piece was individually created with remarkable attention to detail. Every element revealed the skill of its maker. The carved head served as both decoration and a sturdy handhold for a child. Metal reinforcements were carefully shaped to follow the curves of the design, blending practicality with artistry. Although built to be used, the sled survived as a beautiful example of American folk craftsmanship.
30 years ago, we would have said it's unique. But about 20 years ago, another sled, same form, surfaced.
Oh.
And it's approximately twice the size of this one.
The discovery of a larger example suggested this sled may have been made as part of a pair, possibly for siblings of different ages. That possibility made the piece even more fascinating to collectors.
I would value it at somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
Oh my gosh. I could just cry. I had no idea.
So I just thank you today for bringing it into Antiques Roadshow and sharing it with us.
Well, thank you so much. I just never had an idea it would be anything like that.
What began as a $35 rummage sale purchase had become a remarkable piece of American folk art worth hundreds of times its original cost. For years, this large Chinese artwork remained part of a family's life before eventually being placed in storage. Unfortunately, time and poor conditions took their toll.
It didn't fit in our home anymore, and so we stored it, and quite regretfully, it got damaged, and I want to know if it's worth any value or if it's something to just kind of discard and say, too bad it's gone.
After sitting in a damp basement, the piece suffered significant damage, leaving its owner wondering whether it was worth saving at all. What appeared to be a deteriorating decorative panel turned out to be something far more important. Experts identified it as an exceptionally rare Chinese painting, dating back to the 18th century. The artwork depicted Shi Wangmu, a legendary figure from Chinese mythology known as the Queen Mother of the West and leader of the immortals. Despite the damage, the quality of the painting remained remarkable. Delicate gold decoration, intricate robes, and elaborate banquet scenes revealed the skill of the artist. The work was likely created for an extremely wealthy household, possibly to commemorate a major celebration or honor a high-ranking official. Pieces of this scale and quality would have been displayed only in the most prestigious residences of their time. The owner feared the damage might have destroyed its value. Instead, the appraisers saw something very different.
There's gold decoration on the robe, beautifully painted, which is characteristic of a type of design that you find often on Coromandel lacquer screens from the late 17th, early 18th century. And I think that's when this dates from. I'm sitting in the water in the basement, and it's lifting from the paper and wooden background, and even some of the pigments are starting to lift from the silk surface. Nonetheless, the quality of it is superb.
Then came the surprise.
I think, and my colleagues agree, that the value of this has to be in the $30,000 to $50,000 range, as it is now.
Oh my goodness.
What had been sitting neglected in a basement was actually a rare survivor from 18th century China. Far from being discarded, it had become a valuable work of art worthy of preservation. How often does a childhood gift from your father turn out to contain one of the rarest mechanisms in all of watchmaking? For this owner, that possibility never even crossed his mind. The watch had been given to him by his father, who received it years earlier from a neighbor in Greenwich, Connecticut. That neighbor was a civil engineer who also repaired radios in his basement. The owner's father often helped him with those repairs, and the friendship left such a lasting impression that it eventually inspired him to attend MIT.
It was a gift from my father. My father grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was given to him from a neighbor.
We know it's a pocket watch. It's 18-karat gold. It was made by Smith & Son in London.
What they didn't realize was just how remarkable the watch actually was. Made in London by Smith & Son around 1904, it came from one of Britain's most respected watchmaking firms. The company produced precision timepieces for royalty, naval officers, and even the King of Spain himself. A heavy 1/8-karat gold case, an elegant enamel dial, and an unusual power reserve indicator already made it an impressive piece. But the real treasure was hidden inside. Unlike most pocket watches, this example contained a tourbillon escapement. Invented by Abraham Louis Breguet, the tourbillon was designed to counteract the effects of gravity and improve accuracy. Even among high-end watches, tourbillons are exceptionally rare. Without the tourbillon, a similar gold pocket watch might be worth only a few $1,000s. With it, the watch entered an entirely different category of collectability.
So a watch like this with a power reserve indicator, nice heavy big English watch with a normal escapement would retail for around $4,000 to $5,000.
Wow.
This watch in the present market would retail between $40,000 to $50,000.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding. That's amazing. Well, I knew it was a special watch, but I didn't know how special.
The owner had always known the watch was meaningful because of the story behind it. Turns out the neighbor who inspired a future MIT student also had pretty good taste in gifts. Many collectors dream of finding an untouched antique. Very few actually do. More than 20 years ago, one man attended an auction on a whim after spotting a brief newspaper listing for a Buffalo Bill Wild West set. He had never attended an auction before, but something about the description caught his attention.
And I bought it at an auction locally here about 21 years ago. My wife was away for the weekend, and I happened to look in the auction section of the journal here, and it said Buffalo Bill Wild West set. I went to the auction. I'd never been to one before in my life. I ended up with this.
After the sale, an unexpected conversation revealed why the set looked so extraordinary. The collection had belonged to the grandson of a businessman who worked in Europe around the turn of the 20th century. The original owner purchased the toy set expecting that one day he might pass it down to sons. Instead, the family line produced only daughters, and the set remained untouched for generations. Experts identified the set as a rare Buffalo Bill Wild West toy produced in Germany around 1903 by the renowned Heyde Company. The set featured cowboys, Native Americans, buffalo, and frontier scenes inspired by Buffalo Bill's famous traveling show. But what truly set it apart was its astonishing condition. Many similar sets were heavily played with and damaged over time. This example still retained much of its original packing material and appeared remarkably preserved. For collectors, finding the original box is exciting. Finding a complete set that had survived untouched for more than a century was something else entirely.
I think I paid about $400 for it.
That purchase turned out to be one of the best decisions he ever made.
It's just absolutely extraordinary, and the condition is just unheard of. I did some research and talked to one dealer who had sold a similar set a few years back, not in this condition, for in the range of $14,000. This set, on today's market, I think, at auction could bring in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000.
A forgotten toy that had never been played with had become a highly desirable treasure worth many times its original purchase price.
Now maybe I didn't know what I was doing 21 years ago.
The story began in San Francisco during the mid-1980s, when an elderly neighbor decided to move into a retirement home and sell her belongings. Among the items was a cardboard box wrapped in aging cellophane and held together by rubber bands that had nearly disintegrated. Inside was a tea and coffee service, so heavily tarnished that it appeared almost completely black. The neighbor asked just $25, and the couple bought it and brought it home.
We've had it on display at the house. It's really sort of a pain to keep it polished, so it's spent the last year or so in the closet.
When it appeared on Antiques Roadshow, everything changed. Decorative arts expert Jason Preston immediately recognized that this was far more than an ordinary silver-plated tea service. In fact, it was the famous skyscraper tea and coffee service, designed by Louis Rice and introduced in 1928 during the height of the Art Deco era.
This is an iconic example of Jazz Age design.
The design drew inspiration from the dramatic vertical lines of the new skyscrapers transforming American cities during the 1920s. Its bold geometric forms were so influential that experts consider it one of the defining examples of early 20th century industrial design.
This is called the skyscraper tea and coffee service.
What made the set especially significant was its completeness. While individual skyscraper pieces can be found in museums and private collections, complete services like this are extraordinarily rare. According to the family, it had originally belonged to a man who worked for Bechtel and was transferred from New York to San Francisco to help with the construction of the Golden Gate Bridge. The monogram on the service was believed to have been added as a farewell gift from co-workers before the move west.
If this were to go to auction, I believe they would put a conservative auction estimate of $15,000 to $25,000 on it.
It's amazing. Thank you. Wow, I can't wait to tell everybody.
After the episode aired, the owners made the difficult decision to sell the set. As the bidding unfolded online, it quickly surpassed the roadshow estimate.
When it surpassed what Jason told us, and I looked at him and said, "You better sit down."
The hammer finally fell at $54,000. With the buyer's premium included, The final sale price reached $68,415.
We went, holy crap. What just happened here?
Today, a pottery jug that had quietly remained in one Georgia family for generations turned out to be one of the rarest surviving pieces of Southern folk pottery ever seen on Antiques Roadshow. The vessel originally belonged to the owner's great-grandfather, who lived in Washington County, Georgia. Years later, the owner's mother inherited it.
And my mother came by this piece because she admired it. And she had quite an extensive collection until her death in 2000.
This is incredibly rare and grand in scale.
It's brought us a lot of joy.
For the family, it was simply a treasured heirloom with deep, personal meaning. For the appraiser, it was something else entirely. Several details immediately caught the appraiser's attention. The vessel was unusually large, holding roughly 8 gallons, a size rarely encountered today. Even more important, it carried an inscription identifying both the potter and the year it was made. That alone made it highly significant. Most alkaline glazed pottery from the region survives without any identification, leaving historians with little information about who made it. The appraiser explained that pottery from this region was commonly produced by enslaved African-American craftsmen, and the inscription raised the possibility that James Bustle himself may have been African-American. The figures jumping over a broom reflected an African-American tradition often associated with wedding celebrations. Combined with the vessel's massive size, the imagery suggested it may have been created for a large communal gathering. Despite missing its handle and showing old cracks around the spout, the jug's rarity far outweighed its condition issues.
I think that if it were to come to auction, I would estimate its value to be $40,000 to $60,000.
The recommended insurance value was even higher. A piece that had spent generations in one family, appreciated mainly for its beauty and family history, turned out to be an exceptionally rare survivor from the American South before the Civil War. Not every family heirloom changes your life, but sometimes the object that's brought the most joy for generations turns out to be worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Imagine walking into a thrift store, spotting an old purse that simply looks attractive, paying $1.50 for it, and years later discovering it could be worth more than $100,000. That's exactly what happened to this man. Sometime around 2018 or 2019, he came across the purse while browsing a thrift store. There was no research behind the purchase, no knowledge of luxury brands, no suspicion that it might be valuable. He simply liked it.
I just picked it up in a thrift store and liked it and thought it was pretty.
For years, it remained little more than an interesting second-hand find. When he eventually brought it to Antiques Roadshow, he hoped it might be worth a few $1,000s at most.
And do you have any idea of what you think it's worth?
I was hoping maybe $2,000 or $3,000.
The appraiser quickly realized there might be much more to the story. What first caught her attention was the elaborate Art Deco decoration on the front of the purse. The piece featured carved rock crystal surrounded by rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds, arranged in a style known as Tutti Frutti, one of the most celebrated jewelry designs of the early 20th century. That immediately raised an intriguing possibility.
So right when you brought this to the table, I immediately thought to myself, is that Cartier?
There was one problem. The decorative panel was attached to the purse, making it impossible to see the reverse side where a maker's mark would normally be found. The answer remained hidden until the purse was opened. Then came the breakthrough.
I saw here that it's signed Cartier.
What had been purchased on a whim for $1.50 was no longer just a pretty thrift store find. It was an authentic Cartier piece from the Art Deco era. Even more remarkably, the appraiser believed it was likely made by Cartier's French workshop, one of the most prestigious names in luxury jewelry history. The guest's estimate of a few $1,000s wasn't even close. The news left him visibly overwhelmed.
Conservatively, in an auction situation today, it's worth about $35,000. Insurance would easily be over $100,000.
It was worth the trip. It's been so much fun.
The appraiser credited the discovery not to luck alone, but to the owner's instinct. What's the best thrift store find you've ever made? For one woman in New York, the answer turned out to be a piece of paper art she bought for about $5. While browsing a thrift store in Watertown, she noticed an intricate framed paper cutout.
I realize that it's the paper cutting, and it's very intricate.
Okay.
The delicate design featured animals, decorative patterns, and a menorah, all cut with remarkable precision. She took it home for a price so small that she no longer remembered exactly what she had paid.
What did you pay for it?
About $5. No more than 10.
For years, it remained nothing more than a decorative piece in her home. Even when she brought it to Antiques Roadshow, she wasn't expecting anything remarkable. Instead, the appraiser immediately recognized that she had stumbled upon an extraordinary work of art. The artwork belonged to a long-standing Jewish tradition of decorative paper cutting. At the center was the Hebrew word mizrach, meaning east. Historically, works like this were displayed on the eastern wall of a Jewish home as a reminder of the direction of Jerusalem. The piece also featured an American eagle holding a shield, blending religious symbolism with American patriotism.
It's really great folk art.
It is. I loved it.
It's also great Judaica.
But what impressed the appraiser even more was the remarkable condition of the piece. The original frame was still intact. The original backing was still intact. Behind that backing was a newspaper from August 16, 1918, preserved for more than 100 years without anyone realizing it was there.
I'm going to flip it over like this. And the cool thing is you have Albany, New York, Friday, August 16, 1918. It's really like a time capsule.
But there was still one more detail that mattered. The paper cutout was signed by its creator. Although the appraiser had not yet identified the artist, he explained that works by known Hebrew paper-cutting artists can command substantial prices.
What do you think I'm going to say? Want to guess?
200 or 2,000.
2,000. That's a good guess. Okay. Multiply by 10.
Do what?
20,000.
Okay.
Not many people turn $5 into $20,000 with a single trip to a thrift store. The next time someone says you're wasting money at thrift stores, feel free to send them this video. Most collectors get excited when they discover a rare antique. But the reason the woman bought these old pewter plates was much simpler. She couldn't bear the thought of seeing them broken up.
My mother actually purchased them at a flea market or a tag sale back probably close to 40 years ago up in Connecticut. She was not really much of a collector of pewter, but the idea of breaking a set of pewter, a set of anything really, bothered her so much as a collector herself.
So she bought all 6 and kept them together. At the time, she could hardly have imagined that years later, this set would be recognized as an exceptionally rare surviving example of early American craftsmanship.
They were made by Edward Danforth in Hartford, Connecticut in the late 1700s, just before 1800.
Edward Danforth was one of the earliest and most important pewter craftsmen working in Connecticut during the late 18th century. His touch marks were still clearly visible on the plates, more than 200 years later. By the time these plates appeared on Antiques Roadshow, complete sets like this had become extraordinarily difficult to find. The decision to keep the set intact turned out to be the most important part of the story.
They were always sold in sets originally, but they usually got broken up. You're very fortunate that she kept the set together.
Not only as a set, but in remarkably well-preserved condition. Poorly preserved examples often develop pitting and corrosion, dramatically reducing their value. Fortunately, these plates had escaped that fate. For collectors, that combination is exactly what they hope to find: a known maker, a complete set, and unusually strong condition.
Because they have a retail value of around $3,000.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Not a life-changing fortune. but an impressive return for something purchased simply because one woman couldn't bring herself to break up a set. Sometimes the smartest antique purchase isn't the one made with expert knowledge.
My dad gave it to me. He was in Vietnam, and he bought that in Hong Kong and sent it back home.
A bass guitar, bought during the Vietnam War and played in bars for decades, turned out to be worth far more than its owner ever imagined. The instrument originally belonged to the guest's father. While serving during the Vietnam era, he purchased it in Hong Kong and mailed it back home. At the time, it wasn't purchased as an investment. It was simply a working musician's instrument. After returning home, he spent the next 30 years performing and opening shows for country music stars, including George Jones and Tammy Wynette. What nobody realized was that it happened to be a Fender jazz bass made in 1968. The model had originally been introduced for musicians who wanted a brighter, faster playing alternative to Fender's earlier precision bass. Over the decades, it became one of the most influential bass designs ever produced. Unlike many vintage instruments, this example had survived in unusually original condition. Its finish, hardware, and components remained intact despite years of heavy use.
He told me $90.
$90?
Yes, he was tickled when they told him $90.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Even better, the family still knew what the father had paid for it. For a musician in the late 1960s, that probably felt like a great deal. Half a century later, it looked even better. The appraiser estimated that the bass would sell for between $4,500 and $5,000 in today's market.
In today's market, at retail, this guitar would sell for between $4,500 and $5,000.
My goodness, he will be thrilled.
Oh, great.
Not every family heirloom turns into a six-figure surprise, but turning a $90 purchase into a vintage instrument worth thousands isn't bad for a bass that spent most of its life doing exactly what it was built to do, being played. A man arrived at Antiques Roadshow carrying a small cardboard box containing 3 antique dolls. The dolls themselves were certainly intriguing, but they weren't the reason this appraisal would become so extraordinary.
When you mentioned that those dolls actually lived in a house, if those dolls live in a house as old as those dolls, we're talking something quite incredible.
For the appraiser, that single detail immediately overshadowed the dolls themselves. Not just any dollhouse, but one that had remained in the same family since 1705. The miniature house had been passed down through generations of women in the family for more than 3 centuries. According to the owner, it had remained largely untouched throughout that entire time. The dollhouse was so large and delicate that bringing it to the event wasn't practical. Instead, for the first time in Antiques Roadshow history, the production team went to the owner's home to film it. What they found was astonishing.
There is no other like it. It is totally unique.
Built in 1705 on the Isle of Dogs for a girl named Miss E. Westbrook, the dollhouse had survived more than 3 centuries with remarkable preservation. Its rooms remained paneled and furnished. The dolls still wore their original clothing. Many of the contents were exactly where they had been generations earlier.
I was looking at something which was unchanged, essentially, for 311 years.
It's essentially a little time capsule, and according to the appraiser, its importance extended far beyond family history, being recognized as an object of national significance and valued at £150,000. Not bad for a toy that had spent the last 3 centuries quietly growing up alongside the same family. A wedding gift from a family friend turned out to be worth more than many people spend on a house. The drawing had been given to the owner and her husband as a wedding present in 1990. At the time, it was simply a meaningful gift from someone the family knew personally.
Which was a wedding present to me and my husband.
And it's from Wayne and his family. My ex-father-in-law was very good friends with Wayne.
For years, it was treasured for its sentimental value rather than its monetary value. What made the gift unusual was the person who created it. That person was Wayne Thiebaud, one of California's most celebrated artists. Although often associated with the pop art movement, Thiebaud became famous for transforming everyday subjects into fine art, from cakes and pastries to candies and other familiar objects. By 1990, when this drawing was made, he was already at the height of his career. But this wasn't just another drawing. Created specifically for the couple's wedding, it included a handwritten dedication, personal wedding wishes from Thiebaud and his family, and even a portrait of the bride herself, hidden among the artwork, all rendered in a style instantly recognizable to collectors and art historians. Even better, the piece had remained in excellent condition for more than 3 decades. Aside from a small area of minor ink smudging, it had survived remarkably well. That combination of factors made it especially desirable. A personal dedication, strong provenance, a direct connection to the artist, and a work created during one of the most important periods of his career. Suddenly, what had always been viewed as a sentimental wedding gift became something much more significant. The appraiser estimated its replacement value at approximately $30,000.
If I had to put a replacement value on this, I would say you're looking at about $30,000.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I didn't think I better get it insured.